Welcome to tonight's webinar. The webinar for this evening is entitled The Essentials of Lyme Disease Prevention. This is Candace Dickover from the Howard County Lyme Awareness Group in Maryland, and I'll be the facilitator for tonight's presentation. I founded the Howard County Lyme Awareness Group in response to not only suffering from Lyme disease, and unfortunately too little treatment from my initial bite in 2007, but from watching my entire family of 4 go through this debilitating disease. Our mission is to promote advocacy and awareness to the general public, as well as to provide outreach and support to Lyme disease sufferers and their family members. But tonight is all about prevention. Last year, the CDC announced that 300,000 cases of Lyme disease are reported by state health departments each year, and that doesn't account for those already infected or those who don't even realize they're infected. This is a serious epidemic, so let's do something about it, become educated, and prevent further suffering. So tonight, we have our presenter is Bob Oley. He is a public health consultant with an engineering degree from Tufts University and a graduate degree in public health from UNC Gillings School of Global Public Health. Bob has been involved in public health and site work for over 30 years. Early in his career, he served as Director of Environmental Health for the city of Stamford, Connecticut, after which he started a public health, site engineering, and land use planning consulting business. Bob currently works in Pennsylvania and the surrounding states, so he works in Maryland, New York, New Jersey, Delaware, as a public health consultant, specializing in tick-borne disease prevention. An important aspect of his work involves advising families and businesses on how to make their properties safer from ticks and on what personal protection measures can be taken to safeguard family members and workers. Bob has actually appeared on several radio shows, including You Bet Your Garden from NPR, SiriusXM Doctor Radio, and the Magic Garden Show, where he talked about tick-borne diseases and prevention. He also recently appeared on TV on NBC News 4 New York, where he talked about what parents can do to prevent their children from getting bitten by ticks when away at camp. We'd like to welcome Bob Oley tonight as he provides us with some fantastic information to keep us safe. So I'll turn it over to you, Bob.
Thank you very much, Candace, and thank you for that. It's my pleasure to be here and to talk about prevention. And I myself, like you, Candace, have had to deal with Lyme disease personally and in my family, and so I have an intimate knowledge of the disease and as well as prevention and how important prevention is. And I don't claim to know everything about prevention, and I'm always open to hearing other people's ideas about things, and because it's an ever-changing topic. But for this presentation, I'll be talking 45 minutes to an hour, and then hopefully opening it up to questions. And what I'll be talking about really 4 subject areas within prevention: one about ticks, one about personal protection, one about property management, and another about pets. So without further ado, we'll get started. And the first thing I'd like to talk a little bit about are ticks. I'm assuming that most of the listeners that we have here are living on the East Coast, in the central part of the country, on the East Coast. And the ticks that we really have to be concerned about here on the East Coast are 3. And one is the deer ticks, which of course carries Lyme disease, Lone Star ticks, and the American dog tick. Right now, this time of year, we're having to deal, depending on where we live in this multi-state area, with deer nymphal ticks, Lone Star nymphal ticks, and dog ticks, male and female dog ticks. But let me talk a little bit about the deer tick first. There's numerous diseases the deer ticks carry. Lyme disease, babesiosis, anaplasmosis, and Bartonella are the big four. And then, of course, you have mycoplasma, a disease that doesn't have a name yet that's carried by the Borrelia miyamotoi organism, and Powassan encephalitis, deer tick virus. Most of us are familiar with these diseases. The one that I just want to highlight in this grouping is the Powassan encephalitis. It's a disease organism that can get transmitted from the tick to you within 15 minutes of the tick being attached. So when you go to a doctor's office and a doctor says to you, well, how long has the tick been attached, or how long do you think you've had the tick, and you say, well, probably 12 hours or 10 hours or something, and they say, well, you have nothing to worry about because the tick hasn't been on for at least 24 to 48 hours, and you don't have any worry about Lyme disease. And you kind of have to step back and say, well, geez, there's other diseases I have to be worried about, and maybe Lyme disease gets transmitted within 24 hours, and a lot of people believe that. So you can get other diseases in addition to Lyme disease. It can get transmitted very quickly by a tick. So any tick that's attached, you really have to be worried about. And the deer tick is really public enemy number one as far as I'm concerned. The Lone Star tick, you see more Lone Star ticks in the New Jersey shore area. Certainly Maryland and Delaware. As you head further south, Virginia has more Lone Star ticks than they do deer ticks, and that's true of the southern states. But with Lone Star ticks, you've got ehrlichiosis, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, starry disease, which is southern tick-associated rash illness, which is very similar to the Lyme disease, tularemia, it's also called rabbit fever, heartland virus, and the red meat allergy. And to highlight a couple of these, red meat allergy is one that a lot of people don't know too much about. You're seeing more and more of it out in Long Island, where there are a lot of Lone Star ticks. You see more of it in Virginia, again, where there are Lone Star ticks. And what happens with red meat allergy is the tick, when it's attached to you, injects an enzyme in you, and your body develops antibodies to that enzyme. And it just so happens that beef, pork, and lamb also carry that same enzyme. So you've been bitten by a tick, let's say 6 months ago, a Lone Star tick, that you've been injected with this enzyme, and then you eat this beef, pork, or lamb, and in that between period, your body has developed antibodies to that enzyme. So when you eat the beef, pork, or lamb that has that very same enzyme, you develop an allergic reaction to it. And it can be everything from hives to something far more severe than that. So it's more and more, we're seeing more and more of this red meat allergy, and it's something that is very dangerous. And American dog tick, that is, we see that a lot. It's the male and female dog ticks are out now. They can give you Rocky Mountain spotted fever, tularemia, tick paralysis, and possibly ehrlichiosis. The tick paralysis is one that I just want to highlight because that's kind of an interesting disease. The tick, when it's attached to you, and it's the female dog tick that'll do this. She injects a neurotoxin in your body, and the neurotoxin causes your body to go into like a paralysis, and it kind of works its way up from your feet up towards your head, and eventually it affects your heart muscles and your lungs, and you can die from it if you don't discover the tick. And there have been cases of this in New York City, and where the child has been hospitalized with this, and they've done everything, and the child's in the emergency room, and they can't figure out what the story is. And I'm familiar with one case where there was a doctor from I think South Carolina or one of the southern states that happened to be there and said, check this girl's hair very carefully. And this girl had very thick hair. Embedded in the hair was a dog tick. And she removed the dog tick from the girl, and within 24 hours, the symptoms started to subside. Tick paralysis is very real, and if you remove the tick, it'll go away very quickly, but if you don't remove the tick, it's something you can die from. And with these three pictures that are shown here, the female deer tick, the female Lone Star tick, and the female dog tick, the one thing I should point out with these ticks, if you look at the mouth parts, and none of these ticks have heads, they just have mouth parts. If you look at the American dog tick, you see what looks to be a short mouth part at the very top of the tick. You see longer mouth parts on the female deer tick and the female Lone Star tick. The American dog tick is easier tick to remove than the deer tick or the Lone Star tick, and it's easier to remove because it has a shorter mouth part. We can go to the next slide, please. I'm going to talk a little bit about Lyme disease, not a whole lot. Dr. Kathy Spreen covered it in detail a month ago, and we all know what the Lyme disease organism is. A spirochete. It's a bacterial spirochete shaped like a corkscrew. It's syphilis is also a spirochetal bacteria, and this Lyme disease is known as syphilis's bigger, badder cousin, and it's called the new great imitator, the Lyme disease, and it's for good reason, because it imitates so many other diseases, and that's why it's so very hard to treat, because everyone's being treated for everything but Lyme disease, because the symptoms, you go into a specialist's office and he treats you or she treats you for the symptoms you seem to be displaying without really looking carefully at your history. But what's interesting to point out with the Lyme disease, here in the United States, there's 100 different strains of the Lyme disease bacteria. So you can get bitten by a strain in one part of the United States and bitten by a different strain, infected, excuse me, by a different strain in another part, and have totally different symptoms than somebody else. And that's another reason why it's so difficult to treat. You have varying symptoms, and you have varying degrees of severity with those symptoms. And again, you've got 100 different strains. And actually worldwide, this is Lyme disease is an epidemic in the United States. It's really a pandemic when it comes to the world, because it's flourishing Lyme disease in Europe and Asia and all the other countries there. And there, when you count all these other countries and the number and the strains of the Lyme disease organism, there's 300 strains worldwide. So when you look at the different strains, and then everyone has a different immune system that's infected. So if you're infected with the organism, and your immune system, your response to the infection, everyone's different because they have different immune systems. And then the whole issue becomes up with other co-infections that you have to think about. You know, we mentioned the different diseases that you can get with the ticks. Well, you can get more than one disease with a bite of a tick, and you can have 2 or 3 different diseases in your body. Or you get bitten by a tick today and another tick a month from today. And you know, today you can get infected with Lyme disease organism, a month from today you get bitten by another tick, and you can get the Babesia organism in you, or another strain of the Lyme disease. So it's a very difficult disease to deal with, and partly because there's so many different strains, and because the co-infections really complicate treatment. Next, please. I'm going to talk a little bit about deer tick, the development cycle of a deer tick. Deer ticks live for about 2 years, and they go through 4 stages. And their whole 2-year life cycle, they really only have 3 blood meals. They eat 3 times in their lifetime. The May of the year, the female deer tick will lay her eggs. She lays approximately 2,000 eggs in a cluster. It takes her, you know, several days, a couple of weeks to lay these eggs, and then the eggs kind of sit around for several weeks, and then they hatch sometime in June, and then they hatch as larval ticks. And the good thing about larval ticks, when they start feeding, which is in August, they're generally not infected with any disease organism. And I say generally because I'm going to mention the Borrelia miyamotoi. Well, I should mention it now. I mentioned Borrelia miyamotoi as one of the diseases that the deer tick carries. Well, all these diseases that the ticks carries, they're not transmitted from the female adult tick through the egg to the larval stage. The tick has to have a blood meal to pick up the infection. But with the disease organism Borrelia miyamotoi, that organism can be transferred to the larval stage of the tick directly from the female. And it's scary because these larval ticks, they're really the size of a speck of sand. And they're out in the month of August. And heretofore, where you thought, okay, if I'm bitten by a larval tick, I don't have anything to worry about because I know I'm not going to get Lyme disease because the larval ticks are not infected yet. Well, and this is a news flash, they can be infected with Borrelia miyamotoi, and we're seeing more and more of that, not just in the United States, but all over the world. So you have the larval ticks that take their first blood meal in August, and they generally will feed on a mouse, a chipmunk, they'll feed on birds, any kind of vertebrate that they can attach to. And they'll be on that the vertebrate for 2 or 3 days feeding, and they'll drop off, and then they molt into the nymphal stage. And the nymphal stage doesn't do anything for several months, September, October, November, December, January, February, March. It just kind of is dormant and just lays in the leaf litter, lays in the soil, doesn't do anything. And then that nymph comes out the following May. They're even coming out in April now, the nymphs. And the nymphs are the one ticks you really have to worry about because there's a good chance the nymphal tick will be infected with Lyme disease organism or other organisms. And the nymphs are about the size of a poppy seed. So they're very tiny, and you're not going to see them. And all the research that's been done with deer ticks and the nymphs, that people say that 80% of the people that get infected with Lyme disease organisms are infected with are infected by a nymphal tick. And the nymph ticks are out in May, June, July, into August. And it's the time that we're all out enjoying the outdoors, you know, whether it's sports activities or hiking or hunting, and that's when the nymph ticks are really in force, and their entire, you know, spring, summer into early fall, and it's the bite of a nymph that will get you infected with Lyme disease more so than any. And then the nymphs, once they have their blood meal, they kind of hang out for 2 or 3 months, and they molt into an adult tick, and it's the female adult tick that in October comes out, and she's looking for a host, and she'll feed the adult ticks like a bigger host to feed on. So a lot of the adult deer ticks will feed on deer, and in fact the majority of them will feed on deer, but some of them will feed on other animals. They will feed on your pets, and they'll feed on humans as well. And they're out, they come out in October, they're around November, December, January, February, March. I mean, they're out right through the winter time, and they're really, in this part of the country, they're just about the only tick that you'll find in the winter time that's looking for a host to feed on. And unless the temperature is less than 32 degrees, or the ground is covered with snow, or the ground is frozen, then you won't see them. But as soon as the temperature goes above 32 degrees in the winter, and if there's no snow cover on the ground, these ticks will be out looking for a host. And trust me when I say you can get bitten by a tick in the middle of winter, and your pets can get bitten by the deer tick. But you don't see the dog ticks out in the winter time. You won't see the Lone Star ticks out. It's really the deer tick, and unfortunately the deer tick is the tick that carries the Lyme disease organism that most of us are concerned with more than any of the others. Next slide, please. Never trust any tick. If you look at the upper left-hand picture, it gives you a perspective on the size of the ticks. Now, these are deer ticks in the upper left corner picture. The nymph tick is on the far left. That's the size of a poppy seed. In the middle is a male tick. It's a little bit smaller than the female tick. And the female tick on the right is the size of a sesame seed. And then these ticks, they look for a host through a process called questing. What they do is if you happen to be a larval tick or a nymph tick, I mean, they'll hang out on the grass, they'll hang out in the leaf litter. They're generally low to the ground, and because they're low to the ground, I mean, they'll find a mouse to feed on, a white-footed mouse, a chipmunk, a shrew, reptiles, they'll feed on reptiles. Birds, ground-feeding birds, they'll feed on, and you'll find them feeding, and what they do is they have on the end of their front legs, if you look in the picture on the right, the upper right, you'll see what's actually a female deer tick. And she's getting ready, she's what's called questing, and her front legs, they have a set of four pair of legs, and their front legs have what are called Haler's organs on them, and they're sensory organs. And deer ticks have no eyes. They cannot see you, but through these sensory organs on the front, on their end of their in effect their legs, they can feel vibrations. They can pick up carbon dioxide of your body. They can pick up heat. They can pick up body odors, and they can pick this up if you can be 50, 65 feet away, and they'll start picking this up. And when they sense that somebody is in the area, an animal, a dog or a cat or a human, they kind of get in their perch and they get ready, and you actually have to physically touch the tick for them to attach to you. Your clothing has to be in touch with them, your skin, but once you make that contact with the tick in a split second, they're on you, and then they start looking for a place to attach on your body. But they have to wait for you, and the Lone Star tick, by the way, is a little bit different. It's a little more aggressive than the deer tick. Lone Star ticks actually have eyes. Dog ticks have eyes as well. And if a Lone Star tick senses that you're in its area, and let's say you're on a picnic blanket and you're in a park setting somewhere, they'll move in your direction. And one, because they sense you through their organs, their sensory organs on their legs, but also they have eyes, and they can see color, and they can see movement, and so and don't ask me how somebody's ever figured that one out, but they apparently can do that, and they're the more aggressive of these three ticks. I mean, they'll go out looking for you, and that's why can be so very dangerous. Next slide, please. Now, deer are not the only hosts for ticks. In fact, in these pictures here, you see a bird that's his head is covered with ticks. Ground-feeding birds, especially robins, are really, ticks love ground-feeding birds, and they tend to move up, not just birds, but with other vertebrates. They'll tend to move up towards the eyes and the head of the tick, of the vertebrate. The skin is thinner there. It's less likely to be groomed off closer to the head. You see in the upper right is a snake. The lower right is a white-footed mouse, and lower left is a picture of a dog that I really feel sorry for. And I don't know if those are deer ticks, brown dog ticks, or dog ticks, but the dog is obviously infested with these ticks. And I should point out that of all these different vertebrates that the ticks feed on, the white-footed mouse in the lower right-hand corner, that's number one host for a tick that is most likely to give a tick the disease organism that it's going to infect you with. White-footed mice are the worst offenders. They carry all these disease organisms. Chipmunks carry the disease organisms. Shrews, birds carry the disease organisms, but the number one offender for infecting ticks are the white-footed mouse, and believe it or not, deer, which are the name deer ticks, deer do not infect ticks with the disease organisms. Deer are important in the life cycle of a tick because the adult female ticks feed on the deer, and you can have hundreds of deer ticks feeding on a deer, the female adult ticks, and they need that blood supply so they can develop their eggs. And then what happens with the deer will be moving through your backyard. They'll be eating your vegetation in the wintertime, and the deer ticks will fall off the deer. And wherever those deer, the female deer ticks fall off the deer, that's where she'll lay her eggs. So if the deer is moving through your property in December or January or whatever months, and the deer, the female is taking her blood meal, and that happens to be in your garden, well, that female tick will drop off in your garden, and that's where she'll lay her eggs. And like I said in the beginning, I mean, she can lay easily 2,000 eggs, and that's where they'll hatch, and that's where you will get your bites from a larval tick. And then once our larval tick gets infected from a mouse by feeding on a mouse, then it becomes a nymphal tick, and that's, again, these ticks don't move very far on their own. They get carried by mice, they get carried by birds, they get carried by the deer. But once they drop off, wherever they are, maybe they move a foot or two. If it's a lone star tick, like I said, and it picks up your scent, and you happen to be gardening, whatever, that tick may move in your direction 4, 5, 10 feet. But ticks generally are pretty sedentary. They don't move around very much unless they're carried by a host. Next slide, please. Personal protection is key to the avoiding getting tick-borne diseases. Ticks require high humidity. They need it to survive. Without high humidity, they die. And so the areas you want to avoid that harbor ticks, leaf litter is huge for carrying ticks. It can be loaded with ticks. Leaf litter is, when you're raking leaves in the fall or the spring, they tend to be damp. High humidity areas, we used to, at least when I was a child growing up, used to jump in leaf piles and thought it was great fun. Today, I would never jump in a leaf pile or have my kids jump in leaf piles because they can be loaded with ticks. Woodlands have lots of ticks, meadows, ground cover, pachysandra and ivy. We all love planting pachysandra in our backyards because the deer don't eat the pachysandra. But, the pachysandra, again, this provides a high humidity environment for ticks, and ticks love it. Areas along woodlands, where your grass lawn area meets a woodland edge, they can be loaded with ticks. Your grass itself, if you've got short grass and you mow it regularly and it's in sunlight, it's not in the shade, you're less likely to have ticks in that area. But as soon as you get in the shady area, the grass gets maybe a little bit higher, you're closer to the woodlands, that's where you're going to see lots of ticks. Also around ornamental gardens, vegetable gardens, you'll see them more so, and there'll be lots and lots of them. And as I said earlier, that 75% of the people that will get infected by tick bite will be in their own backyard. So the other places you want to avoid are places where rodents like mice and chipmunks will make their nests. And we all love those freestanding farmers' stone walls that have been around for eons. Well, these stone walls serve as nesting areas for lots and lots of mice and chipmunks. And where you have mice and where you have chipmunks and where you have rodents, you have lots and lots of ticks. So if you have any idea, you're sitting on a stone wall and it's in the shade and you're enjoying yourself, very likely you're going to be having to deal with ticks. And again, this time of year where you're dealing with a lot of nymphal deer ticks, because they're very, very small, you're not going to see them. And I neglected to mention earlier when I talked about the deer tick, they inject a painkiller in you when they start feeding on you, and you just can't feel them. So, when you have a mosquito that lands on you and bites you, you can feel it, and you have a chance to hit the mosquito or brush it off. Or the deer tick, any of these other ticks, you just don't know they're on you. And because they're so very tiny, you're really helpless when it comes to deer ticks and other ticks. Wood piles can be loaded with around wood piles with ticks because, again, rodents, mice, chipmunks make their nests in wood piles, tree stumps, fallen logs, storage sheds. I've heard more stories of people who in the springtime are cleaning up around their storage shed and they get bitten by a tick and come down with Lyme disease. So these are the areas that you want to avoid, and it's the areas that the high humidity areas that ticks love, and it's the areas where you have rodents which the ticks feed on. Next slide, please. In terms of treating yourself, permethrin is a chemical that was developed with the U.S. military in the 1980s for use on clothing. And the U.S. military had a problem with troops overseas and here in the U.S. that were being infected with diseases not only carried by ticks but also carried by mosquitoes. You had malaria, dengue fever carried by mosquitoes, and of course the diseases we're all familiar with that are carried by ticks. So they, with a company called Sawyer, Sawyer actually developed this permethrin product that you spray on clothing. And you can buy it in different places now. You can go online and you can buy it through Amazon. You can go in various sporting goods stores like Cabela's, Dick's Sporting Goods, and you can buy this permethrin. You spray this on your clothing. You spray it on shoe wear. You can spray it on a baseball hat. Once it's sprayed on these articles of clothing, it bonds to the clothing. It's not absorbed by your skin. And any tick that comes, that gets on that clothing item, walks over that clothing item, that tick will be repelled and that tick will die. It also repels mosquitoes and chiggers and ants and things like that. But this is a great product. I started using it probably 20 years ago when I was doing a lot of field work, and I sprayed my own clothing. I sprayed my shoe wear. I sprayed my socks, the hat I would wear, and I felt fairly comfortable that I was doing at least something to keep these ticks from going on me. If you spray your clothing, it's good for 5 or 6 washings before you have to respray. If you spray your shoes, you need to spray your shoes like once a month. If you have kids that are going to summer camps, if you have scouts that are out there in the woods camping, or hunters, hikers, you can not only spray clothing, you can spray tents, you can spray sleeping bags, you can spray chairs that you may be sitting on in the woods. Once this dries on the fabric, and you can spray just about any fabric, you don't know it's there. It doesn't discolor your clothing. It doesn't smell. And like I said, it doesn't get absorbed by your skin, and it's been tested inside out by lots of different groups. The EPA has tested this religiously for a lot of reasons. And permethrin, it's a great thing to do, and everyone should have it, and it works. It absolutely works. Next slide, please. The clothing, you can also purchase clothing that's pre-treated with permethrin. There's a company in Greensboro, North Carolina, it's the only one I know of in the United States, that actually developed the technique for bonding permethrin to clothing. You remember I said the U.S. military has developed the permethrin for use on clothing in the 80s. Well, that's where you actually sprayed it on yourself. But in the 1990s, this company, Insect Shield, was working on this process of bonding it to fabric, and so that people would be able to buy fabric that's already pre-treated by clothing. So by 2003, they had developed this process. It had been approved by EPA. Prior to that, it had been tested for years and years. It's tested safe for children, pregnant women. It's recommended for use by the Centers for Disease Control, the World Health Organization. All kinds of groups recommend that people wear clothing that's pre-treated. And again, there's a lot of reasons you wear this clothing, not just for ticks, but if you're in a less developed country where you have to deal with malaria, this repels and kills mosquitoes. Pre-treated clothing is the best thing for you. I myself have bought pants and socks and shirts that's pre-treated. When I go out and I do gardening and I do outdoor field work, when I'm inspecting people's properties, I always wear this clothing. And you can get it through REI, Orvis, Ex Officio, Columbia makes it, Zorel, and actually Insect Shield. You can go on the Insect Shield website, and they actually sell work clothes on their website that's all pre-treated. And all this clothing is good for 70 or more washings. So it's really for the life of the garment. And there's a great website that I just came across recently, bugbeware.com. They have a great selection of clothing that's pre-treated, jeans, shirts for men and women, boys and girls, and it's clothing that's all been treated at the Insect Shield facility in North Carolina, and it's worth checking out. And this pre-treated clothing is really the very best. And again, if you have kids that are going to camp, or you're hiking or whatever, you're doing outdoor activities, I mean, this clothing is worth wearing, and it'll repel and kill ticks for sure. Next slide, please. You can also send this clothing into Insect Shield. If you have favorite items that you wear when you're gardening or golfing, or your kids are going away to summer camp and you want to get their clothing protected and you don't want to spray it yourself, which I said was with the permethrin, which is good for 5 or 6 washings, you can send it to Insect Shield. And for, it's a nominal amount, it's like $8 to $10 per item. They will treat the clothing with permethrin, and so that when you get it back, it's as if it was been pre-treated and you bought the garment new. It's good for 70 or more washings. It's really the life of the garment. And I know lots of people that are going on trips to Europe or here in the United States who kids are going to camp that will send T-shirts to Insect Shield. They get it back very quickly. Insect Shield is a great organization. The website's included here, and it's worth checking out their website, because if you do nothing else, and you cannot avoid it, areas that are infested with ticks, wearing clothing that's pre-treated is really the absolute best you can do, and you'll be doing yourself a favor, your family members a favor, and it's just it's a great product. Next slide, please. Just real quickly here, I touched on this a little bit earlier. The worst time of the year in terms of Lyme disease and getting infected with the bite of a tick is really April through September, and that time period is really a dangerous time period. Obviously, as I indicated earlier, you can get bitten by a tick in the middle of winter, but the risk is much lower in the winter than it is in the spring, summer, and early fall. So, and I mentioned spraying your shoe wear with permethrin. The little table here. If you spray your shoes, and this is what I do, the first of the day of the month beginning in the spring. So if you spray your shoes May 1st, June 1st, July 1st, and so on, your shoes will be protected with the permethrin spray for the entire month-long period of time, and any ticks that may be crawling up your feet, starting at your shoes, will be repelled and killed. So it's a great way to prevent getting bitten by a tick. And next slide, please. And how protected are you? The University of Rhode Island, the Tick Encounter Resource Center, did a study on summer clothing, and they said if you're wearing a summer T-shirt that's treated yourself or pre-treated, you're 3 times less likely to be bitten by a tick. With the shorts, you're 5 times less likely. If you're wearing pants, long pants and long sleeve shirt, that even it makes it far less likely you're going to be bitten by a tick, because these ticks just can't survive on these garments. And then if you're wearing shoes that are treated, and you would treat your shoes yourself, you cannot buy pre-treated shoes, and you wear socks that you are pre-treated or you spray yourself, you have 74 times less chance of being bitten by a tick. They actually put live ticks on volunteers and that obviously weren't carrying disease organisms, and they determined that you get this kind of protection just from wearing clothing that's treated or by yourself or pre-treated, and your shoe wear. So again, if you did nothing at all and didn't even want to wear the pre-treated clothing or treat it yourself, and you sprayed your shoes and socks, you're cutting down the chances of getting bitten by a tick substantially. And ticks, the nymph ticks, I mean, they generally are low to the ground. I mean, they're like on a blade of grass, they're in the leaf litter, and that's where they start crawling out. That's where they'll attach on you in that level. And in the adult ticks that are out in the wintertime, fall, winter, and early spring, you know, they're up a little bit higher. They could be 1, 2, 3 feet off the ground, and because they're looking for a larger mammal like a deer to feed on. And whereas the larval ticks and the nymphal ticks, I mean, they're looking for a smaller vertebrate to feed on, and they're lower to the ground. And like I said, the nymph ticks are the ticks you really have to worry about. Next slide, please. The skin repellents, their repellents are a great adjunct to the clothing. If you were to do one or the other, I would definitely do the clothing and not necessarily do the repellents, but as a total package, you really need the repellents. Skin repellents, the delivery system when we talk about clothing is the clothing when it talks about permethrin. When we talk about insect repellents, the delivery system is your skin. And how the repellents work, I mean, you spray repellent on your exposed skin, and then it evaporates. And what happens is it releases an odor when it evaporates, and what it does is the tick or a mosquito or whatever, it gets fooled by the odor, they get confused by the odor, and they don't quite know what to do or where they are, and they're repelled by it. In 2008, the Centers for Disease Control came out with a list of 4 repellent ingredients that they rated equally as being effective against ticks. They included DEET, which I think most of all of us are familiar with, IR 3535, and picaridin, are 3 chemicals, and 1 natural essential oil is lemon eucalyptus. And they rank them all equally for when it comes to ticks. There's been a few others that have been developed since then. There's a product called BioWud, which is, you can see in the lower right-hand corner, that actually is a chemical that's structurally similar to a wild tomato plant, and is very successful for repelling ticks. All these insect repellents, by the way, they don't kill the ticks. All they do is repel the ticks, and that's what you want to happen. You want to repel them. Next slide, please. You have to be careful with repellents in general, because there are a lot of repellents on the market, and a lot of them are essential oils, and the essential oils can be great as repellent: castor oil, cedar oil, peppermint oil, lavender. These are all natural repellents, but the problem with these essential oils is that for the most part they evaporate very quickly. And I mentioned that these repellents work by evaporating and the odors they produce, and once they're evaporated they don't work anymore. So you can put on a repellent that's all essential oils and you think you're doing yourself a favor because it's all natural, and you think it's going to work all day, and it may only work for an hour, it may work for 2 hours, and then you're totally unprotected. So you really have to be careful with the repellents you use. And if you go to the next slide, EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, reviews and registers all insect and tick repellent products that contain chemicals. They also review a few others if you submit them. The lemon eucalyptus is not required to be submitted to EPA because it's not a chemical, but the people that make lemon eucalyptus repel is one of those that do. They have submitted it to the EPA. The BioWud that I mentioned just a little bit ago, that's been submitted to the EPA for testing. You want to check your insect repellents and make sure that it has an EPA registration. If it has an EPA registration on it and it says on the container that it repels ticks, then you can be very sure that it does in fact repel ticks. They have very rigorous testing procedures on how they test for repelling your ticks. And on this slide is a website, EPA website, that you can actually go on their website and you can look at what repellents have been reviewed by them and signed off by them and given EPA registration numbers, and they'll tell you how long these repellents work to repel ticks. Take lemon eucalyptus. I mean, they have repel listed as one of their lemon eucalyptus, and it'll say 6 to 8 hours that it repels ticks. Some of these others, they'll give, the picaridin is a great chemical for tick repellency. That may be 8 to 10 hours. You want to make sure that whatever repellent you're putting on your skin or the skin of your children or family members, that however long that activity is that they're engaged in outdoors, that it's going to last the full length of the activity. And if it doesn't last the full length of that activity, you have to retreat yourself or your family members. So knowing how long these repellents work is critical, and it's vitally important, because I know lots of people that will buy repellents that say, wow, this is great, it's natural, and I'm using this on my child, and you send them out the door, and I guarantee you an hour after they go out the door, their repellent is no longer working. And you just sent your son out to camp, or whether it's a day camp or whatever kind of activity for the day, and if it's in the woods, the odds are very good that they'll pick up a tick bite. And certainly in this part of the country where we all live in the East Coast, I mean, ticks are infested this whole East Coast area, as well as the upper Midwest, and it's a very serious problem. Next slide, please. Personal protection, again, if you take your clothing and before you enter the house or as you enter the house and you take it off, you can put it in a dryer and clothes dryer on high heat for 20-30 minutes, and it'll kill any tick that's on that clothing, whether it's a dog tick, Lone Star tick, deer tick. I sometimes wish that I could stick myself in a clothes dryer or stick my children in a clothes dryer, but that just wouldn't work. Your clothing, you can kill anything on clothing or any kind of article that may have been on the grass, a blanket or whatever, and you can put it in a clothes dryer and it'll kill the ticks. I know a person put a clothes dryer, had one installed in their garage, so when their family members come through, they throw the clothes in the dryer before they enter the house, even if they've been outside. It's a great way to make sure you're killing ticks. Put your clothes in a clothes washing machine. The clothes washing machine, even on high heat, high water temperature, will not kill ticks. In fact, there was an experiment done at the University of Rhode Island where they submerged a tick for 2 days in water, this ticks, and to see whether the ticks would die. And they came out of the water like they had just been for a swim, a short swim. I mean, they were still alive and kicking. So clothes dryer is it's an important thing to know, and it does work. Next slide, please. Checking yourself for ticks is critical. After any outdoor activity, at the end of the day before bedtime, ticks like moist areas of your body. They'll go between your toes, behind your knees, your groin, your navel, armpits, behind and in your ears, on your scalp. If you're female and you're wearing a bra, they'll work their way up their body. Ticks are always climbing up, and a tick will climb up until it hits a restriction. And if it hits the bra strap, it'll stop right there on your back, and that's where it'll attach to you. And you won't feel it, because when it attaches, like I said, it injects a painkiller in you, and you won't know it's there. And these tick checks, you need sometimes people to looking at your back, other parts of your body that you can't really access. This picture here shows somebody on a toilet seat, checking their groin area, their legs, their upper body, probably their navel, and whatever else they can see from that vantage point. But tick checks are critical. These ticks are small, and the more you do of them, the greater the likelihood that you'll find a tick that you don't want on you. Next slide, please. Removing ticks, I won't say too much about it, except there's a right and wrong way to do it. You never use petroleum jelly, lighted cigarette, kerosene, alcohol, gasoline, nail polish. You don't do that because what you're afraid of if you do that, that the tick will regurgitate its stomach contents into you. Using a tweezer, a fine-pointed tweezer, is really the best way to do it. There's a lot of tick removal implements on the market that you can use. They don't all work well for the tiny ticks. The tweezers seem to work best for the tiny ticks, but most all these implements work well for the bigger ticks in terms of removing them. You should never handle a tick with your hands because some of these disease organisms can be on the outside of the body of the tick. And if you're picking the tick off with your hand, and then these disease organisms get on your hand, and you have a cut, or your mucous membranes, through your mucous membranes, you can infect yourself just by removing a tick. So you really, you have to be wearing like latex gloves, or if you're not in a position where you have them, using twigs or leaves to kind of pick that, or some kind of a cloth. But you have to be very careful. And then when you remove the tick, you want to make sure you save it, because and the chance that tick is infected with a disease organism or organisms, you want to be able to send that tick out for testing. And I will tell you that if you have been bitten by a tick, at least I personally, I wouldn't wait. I would go on some sort of prophylactic antibiotic treatment, and I certainly would see a healthcare provider to get them to try to prescribe something like that. And then you can deal with whether or not that tick happens to be carrying any disease organisms. But you need to save the tick, write the time you took the tick off you, where it was taken, and because that's important information. You can put it in a Ziploc bag. You don't need to freeze it. You can put it in your garage, and dead or alive, that tick can be tested weeks, months later and tell you what it's carrying. Next slide, please. Tick testing kits are available. You can buy them through Amazon. One is called Lyme. It's in the lower right-hand corner. It's a tick testing kit. It costs $16 on Amazon. It's in the laboratory you send it to is Northeast Infectious Disease Diagnostic Laboratory at East Stroudsburg University. You can send it there. The tick, they'll test the tick for Lyme disease. It costs another $39 to have it tested for Lyme disease. You can also have it tested for other disease organisms like the Babesia, Anaplasma, and Bartonella. If it's a dog tick, you can get it tested for Rocky Mountain spotted fever and tularemia, as well as there's also another kit that's out there that called the Lyminator. You can buy that on through Amazon. It has 2 testing vials in it. You can test the tick yourself to see whether it's carrying Lyme disease. It's a very high sensitivity test, and then within 10 minutes you can determine whether the tick that was on you or on your pet, if it's a deer tick, whether or not that's carrying the Lyme disease organism. And I've used it, and it works. And they're actually this company is working on further developing the test so that somewhere down the line that you'll be able to test for the Babesia, Anaplasma, and Bartonella organisms as well as the Lyme. But for right now, all you can do is test for the Lyme. But it's within 10 minutes you know whether or not the tick is at least infected with Lyme disease. And there's other labs you can send your ticks to, Klongen, which is in Maryland, Igenics in California. But you can go online. There's on all the different states. You get all different labs for sending ticks out. But definitely save the tick. You really need to do that. Next slide, please. The best resource I know out there for prevention was the Tick Encounter Resource Center. The website is listed here. It's run by the University of Rhode Island. It has information about ticks all over the United States, what ticks you can expect in your area, what ticks you can expect in other parts of the country. It is the absolute best website when it comes to prevention, and not just in your own backyard, but if you happen to be going out west, let's say, and you want to know what kind of ticks you have to deal with in, let's say, the state of Montana, you can go on their website and they'll tell you what ticks are in the state of Montana, whether it's a high risk, a low risk, or medium risk. And it's just a tremendous resource, and I use it all the time. And there's a fellow who runs it named Tom Mather. He's known as the tick guy in New England. He's a great guy, and it's a great resource and worth having. Next slide, please. Property management. I've said a little bit about property, so I won't talk too much about it, but ticks need high humidity. So the more sunlight you can get in your property, the better it is for you in terms of keeping ticks away. Trimming trees, mowing your grass, keeping your grass short, removing vegetative cover like the pachysandra. These are in areas that you use as a family. You know, if it's a far-off area on your property and no one goes there, your pets don't go there, you don't go there, then it really doesn't matter. But it's in areas that you use that you really want to make them safer from ticks. And leaf piles, brush piles, they really need to be removed. Firewood piles, as I mentioned, there are lots of ticks associated with firewood piles. Bird feeders, I didn't mention, but you know, you need to move those away from your houses because they attract rodents, they attract deer. Where there are rodents and deer, there are ticks. Using patios wherever you can, what's called hardscape, brick walkways, gravel walkways, and planting plants that don't require a lot of water and that the deer don't like to eat. And unfortunately, if it's a real bad winter, deer will eat just about anything. But you want to try to plant vegetation that they're not going to like, so they're not tending to go in your yard, because they'll come in your yard, and as I indicated earlier, they'll drop ticks on your property, and there's not much you can do about it. So trying to increase the sunlight so there's less humidity on your property, and removing areas where hosts like rodents can they use as shelter, like pachysandra and ivy and things like that. Next slide, please. Swing sets. Swing sets. It's a killer. I drive around and I see all these swing sets that people put for their kids right next to the edge of the woodlands, and I just kind of cry when I go by, because I know that you know, they're in high-risk areas along the edge of the woodlands where the grass meets. Is loads and loads of ticks, and I understand why people want to put their swing sets there, because you know, it's shady and it's cool, and you know, and it's, you know, where I would want to be from a shade standpoint and a comfort standpoint, but from a tick standpoint, it's the worst place you can be. Put these swing sets, sand boxes, all these things out into the grassy area where the grass is cut short. Use wood mulch underneath these swing sets. Put wood mulch along stone walls. You really need to get these play areas away from the edge of the woodlands, and because woodlots are loaded with rodents and ticks and deer, and where there are rodents, where there are deer, there are ticks, and where there are ticks, there's Lyme disease. Next slide, please. One important aspect of a property management program is spraying with the pesticides. I know there are a lot of people that don't like the idea of using a pesticide, but there are a lot of pesticides out there, like cedar oil and neem oil, that you can use that are not chemicals. They don't work quite as well as chemicals, but you know, it's there's parts of your property that are worth spraying, like the edge of the woodlands, around your around your ornamental garden areas. There's a great website, Do My Own Pest Control, that I use. I'll go on that website, and I've actually ordered a chemical called bifenthrin. It goes under the name Talstar. You can spray this yourself. You can bring landscapers to come in and spray your property. You don't need to spray your whole property. If you have a good part of your property is in the grass, short grass, and it's exposed to a lot of sunlight, you don't need to spray it because the odds are very good that there are no ticks there. They can't survive. But shady areas around stone walls, around your storage shed where mice will make their homes, these are areas you want to think about spraying. And you want to spray really 3 times a year. You want to spray the middle of May, the middle of June, and then again the middle of October. You spray the middle of May and the middle of June because you want to kill the nymphs that are nymph ticks that are out now, and then you spray the middle of October because you want to kill the adult ticks that are female ticks in particular coming out, because if you can kill the female ticks that are going to lay her thousands of eggs in the spring, if you kill them beforehand, then you really done yourself a favor. But spraying is something that should be part of any program. You can get, certainly with the bifenthrin, some of these chemicals, near 100% kill on ticks. And it's not the chemicals that were used years ago that you got contaminated water supplies. Most of these chemicals, they get degraded within the first few inches of the topsoil, and they don't last more than a week or two. And you need to learn to read the directions on the labels. But just do my own pest control site if you like to do stuff yourself. It's easy to use. I've done it, and I guess if I can do it, anybody can do it. So it's a good thing as part of any program. And I know I'm running a little short on time, and I'm going to be ending with pets, because the pets are key here, and you need to protect your pets as much as you need to protect yourself and your family. Pets will get all the diseases that you get: Lyme disease, ehrlichiosis, babesiosis. And when you walk your pets outside, you need to avoid areas where there are ticks. Walking through the middle of the woods, walking through fields of grass where the grass is high. I once had a dog some years ago, and I was out doing field work, and she was a bearded collie, and she was jumping through the high grass. And came back, and over the next couple of days, I picked up over 30 ticks, and they were probably for the most part dog ticks, because at the time I didn't know the difference between a dog tick or a deer tick, but the deer ticks don't survive very well in high grass in the sunlight, and you're more likely to come across a dog tick because they're not as desiccation prone as a deer tick is. So avoiding areas where there are ticks with your pets when you're walking them, and checking your pets regularly for ticks at night after you walk them, and take a comb and brush through their coat and look for ticks. Ticks with your dogs will go in their paws and between their toes, their claws, and then they tend to work up towards the head. You'll find a lot of ticks like that picture of that dog early on. They like around the eyes, around the ears, and you'll find a lot of them there too. So next slide, please. Do not let your pets run free outside. If you have a dog and you ought to have an enclosure outside that's in an area that's has a lot of sunlight, short grass. You don't let leaf litter build up, and you fenced in area, so you're reasonably sure there are not ticks in the area where you make a run for your dog. The pets, there are all kinds of products that are on the market for treating your pets for if they're bitten by a tick, and there's also a Lyme disease vaccine that's available. All these products, you need to talk to your veterinarian about their use, and they all have their use, and different parts of the country will have different types of products. And turn to the next slide. The tick repellents for pets. I think we've seen a lot of these names. You can buy them in different stores. The Advantix 2, Frontline, and Advantage. I mean, these are all what are called spot-on products. There's a liquid that's put between the shoulder blade of your pet and your dog, and that's once a month. And then there's a couple of collar products, Seresto and Preventic. These are two products that they use collars. Seresto is kind of interesting because it's a collar that repels and kills ticks, and you put it on and it's 8 months. It works for 8 months. So you put it on and you kind of forget about it, and and it's not affected by the water, and and it works very well in repelling ticks. But you should seek the advice of a veterinarian when you're looking at these products. But your pets, they're really sentinels for the diseases that we get. And I will guarantee you that all the pets in all these states on the East Coast are all being infected. And the veterinarians, believe it or not, have better records than we do when it comes to these type of statistics. And last but not least, the last slide, the beware, pets, they can be treated with these products, these spot-on products, and they can have a tick come in on them on their coat that that hasn't died yet, and bring it into the house. And if that dog goes on the furniture, that tick can end up on the furniture. If that dog sleeps in your bed, on your bed, that dog can transfer the tick to you directly from them. I tell people, I love dogs and cats. And cats, by the way, don't seem to get Lyme disease as much as dogs. They do get it, and they can be infected by it and made quite ill by it, but not to the extent that dogs do. And I'm not quite sure why, but it's the case. But these pets, you cannot allow them to go on your furniture. I'm sorry to say, you cannot allow them to sleep with you, unless if it's an indoor cat. That's a different story. They don't go outside. But a cat that goes outside, a dog that goes outside, I mean, you're really asking for trouble. And the statistics are there. I mean, people that have pets are more likely to be infected with Lyme disease than people who don't. And it's simply because their dogs bring ticks in, and there's not much you can do about it. One interesting solution with the dog beds that Candace presented to me is spraying your dog bed with permethrin. And I mentioned spraying permethrin in your clothes and your shoes and your hats. You can spray your dog bed with permethrin, and it dries in 1 or 2 hours, and once it's dry, it's perfectly fine to use. And you can spray that once a month, and any ticks that are on your dog that that get transferred to the bed, that touch that bed, they'll die. And it's a great idea. And there's also one more thing I should mention. The company Insect Shield that we talked about a little bit earlier, they make a blanket that costs around $30, and that you can use in a dog crate. You can use it on your seat of your car where your dog might be sitting. You can use it yourself. And if you're picnicking in a park somewhere, you want to sit on a bench that you're worried about that there may be ticks on the bench. These blankets are great. They're pre-treated. They're good for really the 70 or more washings. They're treated with the permethrin, and they work. And it's a great investment to make in your health and the health of your family. And I'm going to close by saying, prevention is really the key element in not getting tick-borne diseases. Once you get them, I mean, you can be in a whole lot of trouble. And I think most of us are aware of that. We need to reprogram how we treat our how we treat going outside. And you've got to think, okay, where am I going? Are there ticks? How am I going to treat myself? I'm going to check for ticks. You just have to, it's a whole different mindset when it comes to ticks and prevention. And it's key to staying healthy, because there are, as Candace indicated earlier, I mean, we have here in the United States at least 300,000 new cases of Lyme disease a year. And I suspect it's, far greater than that. And there's no reason for it. And we need to take prevention seriously. And that's it. So we'll open it up to any questions that you may have, and feel free to type them in the box. And thank you very much.
Well, Bob, thank you. You've shared some fantastic information. I know our family just religiously uses permethrin. We spray ourselves because we've got scouts and we're big into scouting, and that hasn't stopped us despite, coming down with Lyme disease and being quite debilitated.
And it shouldn't stop you from partaking in outdoor activities. I mean, you can't shut yourself in and never go outside. It shouldn't be that way. So if you take the proper precautions, you can still enjoy the outdoors. And that's not to say that with 100% certainty you won't get bitten by a tick, but it really, really decreases the odds.
Right. It certainly makes me feel safer when we know we're sprayed, with permethrin, right. And then we put on repellents as well, and we feel a lot more protected and better about going out.
Absolutely.
Bob, I did want to ask you about, I know there is something between, the use of permethrin and cats. Can you explain that?
Permethrin in cats, permethrin in its wet form is toxic for cats. And once you spray permethrin on your clothing, let's say, or your shoes, let's say you're spraying your shoes with permethrin, you don't want your cat to be purring up against your shoes against wet permethrin, because that's a neurotoxin for cats. And and it can harm the cat. But once the permethrin is dry, whether it's on your shoes or your clothing or whatever, it has no effect whatsoever on a cat. And because it's bonded to the shoe, it's bonded to the fabric, it will not affect the cat whatsoever. So it's only in its wet form. And that's when you have to be careful when it comes to cats. Dogs are entirely different matter, and it's just cats. And again, it's only in its wet form.
Great to know. Thank you. All right, we do have some questions. Rebecca is asking, where did this 24 to 48 hour time frame come from? She said she's been trying to research it and has
Yeah.
found nothing published. Where is that coming from?
The 24 to 48 hours, it comes from the Centers for Disease Control. Where they get it, I'm not sure where they get it, to be quite frank. I know in Europe, where they have similar issues with ticks and Lyme disease, that they've actually done research with their ticks, and their tick is they have a tick that's called a sheep tick, which is a cousin to our deer tick, and they've found that in 50% or more of the cases that the Lyme disease organism is transferred from the tick to the human in less than 17 hours. So anecdotally, you can talk to lots of doctors that treat Lyme disease, and they'll tell you that some of their patients that come in, I mean, they know exactly when that tick attached, and they can develop symptoms within hours. It can be that quick. So the information that's out there that's promulgated by the Centers for Disease Control, I don't think I don't know where they get that information, quite frankly, and quite frankly, I don't think it's useful information to anyone that's bitten by a tick, because it might cause them to think that, hey, I got nothing to worry about, and when in fact that they do. And it's not just the Lyme disease organism that you've got to worry about. Like I said, there's other organisms like the Powassan encephalitis that within 15 minutes you can get infected. Rocky Mountain spotted fever, which I didn't talk too much about, carried by the American dog tick. Again, you can get that very quickly within 2 hours. So the 24 to 48 hour rule is out there, and I don't think it justifiably is out there.
Right. Thank you. Okay. So, Judy asks, if permethrin sprayed at home on your clothing, if they aren't washed the 4 to 5 times, does the spray last longer?
Yeah, it does. If you have that clothing, it'll stay on there for the 5 or 6 washings, and then you keep the clothing inside. One thing about permethrin that I failed to mention, whether you spray yourself or you buy the pre-treated clothing, you cannot dry clean the clothing. It'll remove the permethrin. So you know, once you spray, you're not going to dry clean this clothing. But yeah, as long as that clothing is inside, you don't keep it outside on the porch, because the ultraviolet light can break it down. It'll stay for that full 5 or 6 washings. So if you don't wash it for 6 months, and over that 6 months you use it 4 or 5 times, it'll be good for that 4 or 5 times, and over that 6-month period.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Shireen asks, if the property sprays only last a week, then why are we only spraying mid-May, mid-June, and mid-October?
Well, see, the sprays will last usually 1 to 2 weeks. That's a very good question. But the knockdown, the kill is very quick, and it's if you were to spray today, you would be killing ticks within the first 1 or 2 days. I mean, it doesn't take a long time for this spray to kill the ticks, and it does degrade over a 1 to 2 week period, so that you're going to lose the effectiveness, and that's due to the weather elements. But if you spray, let's say, in an enclosed canopy area and you spray around the windows, let's say, just because you're worried about insects in general, that spray will last for months, preventing insects from entering your home. But due to the weather elements, it only lasts 1 to 2 weeks, but you get your kill. I mean, the kill of the ticks happens very quickly, and it's not over an extended period of time. And because it's so quick, like I said, with some of these chemicals like the Telstar, which is bifenthrin, you can get close to 100% kill, and within a short order, like just a few days, and that's what makes it so good.
Great. Okay, here's another question. She's asking, can a dog taking tick protection medications carry ticks indoors anyway on their fur?
Yeah, absolutely. Depending on the medication they're taking, a lot of these medications work by the tick with the tick biting the dog, and once the tick tries to bite the dog, it gets it ingests a neurotoxin that will kill the tick. And some of these supposedly will move out through the effectiveness of these spot-on products will move out through the fur of the dog, but you can't always count on that. So, what you have to assume is that, unless you use a topical spray that it actually kills tick, and you spray your dog with this topical spray, that yes, they can carry, if they can use a spot-on product, they can use a collar, and they could still carry a tick into the house. And because most of these products work when a tick bites the animal, and they don't work so well on their fur. And then the further away, like some of these collars, the flea and tick collars that you can buy, the further away you are from the collar, the less effective the collar is, and at least the ones that don't get absorbed systemically by the dog. So you have to, despite those precautions, you still have to check your dog and because it is possible that they can bring it on their coat.
Right. So I imagine the longer-haired pets will be more at risk for carrying in on their coat.
Absolutely, the longer-haired pets, and I understand with the Seresto collar that I mentioned that's listed as one of the collars you can put on your dog. That product supposedly gets absorbed into the fur of the dog, but the longer the coat, I suspect the less likelihood that it's going to work on a dog that has a long coat versus a short coat. So
Mm-hmm. Okay.
you have to be careful no matter what, even with using that. But at least you're protecting your dog from the bite of a tick, even though that dog may bring that tick into the house, and which is another issue.
Right. Okay. All right. Julia asks, why is there a vaccination for humans in Europe and Germany, but not in the U.S.? She said she was vaccinated as a child growing up in Germany.
Well, I don't know too much about the vaccine in Germany. I know that there was a vaccine here in the United States that people were using in 1998, 99, 2000. I myself received that vaccine. It consisted of 3 shots over a period of time, and then they had issues with the vaccine, and they withdrew the vaccine from the market in 2001 or 2002. I'm not familiar with the vaccine in Germany. I don't know if what she was vaccinated with, if they're still vaccinating people with. Surprisingly, the vaccine they have for dogs, but they don't have a vaccine for people here in the United States. So I'll check that out more about the vaccine in Germany, because there is such a thing. If this person can email me and send me information about it, I'd like to learn about it. I know there's in Germany, where you have a population of around 85, 90 million people, that they say that there's 1 million new cases of Lyme disease a year in Germany. Germany and the rest of Europe is going through what we're going through in terms of the epidemic of Lyme disease, as well as other co-infections. So if they have a vaccine, I'd like to learn about it, because I don't know anything about it, unfortunately.
All right. Someone else asks, are there ticks in Central America? She's got a daughter that's moving there.
Yeah, there are. There are ticks all over the world. I mean, they're from the North Pole to the South Pole. And in Central America, there's a tick, at least one of the ticks I'm familiar with is called the cayenne tick. And they carry Rocky Mountain spotted fever. There's probably a host of other ticks. You probably want to try to check that out. But yes, Central America, South America, they do have ticks. And I don't know that they have the Lyme disease issues that we have, but there's other diseases that like Rocky Mountain spotted fever that is carried by this cayenne tick that I know is in Central America and South America as well, and they need to be careful, absolutely.
Great, thank you. Oh, actually, Julia wrote back in. She said to let you know that the German vaccine is called FSME, and she's pretty sure they're still using it because her mom keeps telling her to get the kids vaccinated. So
Huh.
maybe you can look.
Yeah. How do you spell, how do you do that? FSME?
Yes,
Okay.
FSME.
Well, thank you for that information. I'll definitely check into it and see what information I can get on it because I'd like to know about it.
All right. And just finally, one last question. What is the number one preventative measure you can take other than avoiding a tick-infested area? What would you say is the number one thing to do?
Okay, if you were to do, if nothing at all, the best thing you can do other than avoidance is wearing clothing that's treated, whether you treat it yourself or is pre-treated. And this includes spraying your shoe wear once a month. Uh, it's easy to put on clothing that's you wake up in the morning, you put on your clothes. If it's treated or pre-treated, and you know you're going outside, you're going to be outdoors in an area that's infested with ticks. It's easy. It's not expensive, and it's absolutely the best thing you can do. And you know, when I go gardening, and I still do it despite the ticks, I'll wear shoe wear that I spray. I have socks that are pre-treated. I actually bought them through Insect Shield. I have pants that I actually you know, kind of look like a geek, and I kind of insert them in my socks. I have light colored pants. Um, and I have a shirt that is pre-treated, and then I use insect repellent on my exposed skin. And I happen to like picaridin. Let's see, Avon makes some great products. They call Bug Guard Plus. One has picaridin in it, and the other has IR 3535. Coleman's makes a great product that has IR 3535 in it. But if you did nothing else at all, the clothing is key. Absolutely, absolutely key.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Bob. You have been just a wonderful source of information.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
Um, if you would like to learn more about Lyme disease, we had a webinar last month with Dr. Kathy Spreen, and you're welcome to watch that, and it's on our website at www.hclyme.org. It will give you in-depth information about Lyme disease, signs and symptoms, explanation of the tests, an overview of some of the other tick-borne illnesses. So feel free to watch that. Thank you very much for attending. If you have any questions, feel free to email me at lymeaware1@gmail.com, and I'll be happy to help. We thank you again for attending this evening, and we wish you well. Don't forget to do your tick check. Thank you.